गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन यमुनतीरवनचारि यमुनतीरवनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन व्रज जन यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुनतीरवनचारि यमुनतीरवनचारि जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe. Jai Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe. Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. So start with the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. On the chapter that will not be possible to assist you. Chapter 15. Harvi Cohen came often to room 501 to visit the Swami who had so impressed him at Ananda Ashram. Harvi says, the room he occupied was a tiny office in the back of the Yoga Society in uptown Manhattan. I began to go there regularly, and we sat facing each other on the floor in this little office with his typewriter and a new tape recorder on top of 2 suitcases. And there was a box of books he had brought from India and a color reproduction of dancing figurines, which he looked at often. I told Swami Bhaktivedanta that I was an artist, and he asked me to please paint the picture of the dancers, which he explained was of Lord Chaitanya and his disciples. The painting was called Sankirtana. Whenever I came to visit him, Swami would always be happy to see me. I told him about myself, and we chanted Hare Krishna together in his room many nights that winter. I would get the train uptown from my apartment to go see him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, continuing with the pastime by which the Prachetas have met Lord Shiva. So we're reading verse 32 today. I'll just go through the Sanskrit myself. Maitreu vacha ityanukrosha hridayo bhagavan ahatan chivaha padhanjalin raja putran narayana parovachaha. Maitreu vacha ityanukrosha hridayo bhagavan ahatan chivaha padhanjalin raja putran narayana parovachaha. Maitreu vacha ityanukrosha hridayo bhagavan ahatan chivaha padhanjalin raja putran narayana parovachaha. Synonyms. Maitreu vacha. The great Saint Maitreya continued to speak. Iti, thus. Anukrosha hridaya, very kind-hearted. Bhagavan, the Lord. Aha, said. Tan, unto the Prachetas. Shiva, Lord Shiva. Patha Anjalin, who was standing with folded hands. Rajaputran, the sons of the king. Narayana Paraha, Lord Shiva, the great devotee of Narayana. Vacha, words. Translation on purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Sai Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The great sage Maitreya continued. Out of his causeless mercy, the exalted personality, Lord Shiva, a great devotee of Lord Narayana, continued to speak to the king's sons, who were standing with folded hands. Purport. Lord Shiva voluntarily came to bless the sons of the king, as well as do something beneficial for them. He personally chanted the mantra so that the mantra would be more powerful. And he advised that the mantra be chanted by the king's sons, Rajaputras. When a mantra is chanted by a great devotee, the mantra becomes more powerful. Although the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is powerful in itself, a disciple upon initiation receives the mantra from his spiritual master. But when the mantra is chanted by the spiritual master, it becomes more powerful. Lord Shiva advised the sons of the king to hear him attentively, for inattentive hearing is offensive. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So reading the translation again. The great sage Maitreya continued. Out of his causeless mercy, the exalted personality, Lord Shiva, the great devotee of Lord Narayana, continued to speak to the king's sons who were standing with folded hands. So thank you for, again, allowing me to speak. And as always, I'd like to acknowledge again that there are many devotees who are much senior to me on this call. So we beg for the blessing so that we can say something relevant and beneficial for everyone today. So looking at the section, we're hearing of how the Prachetas have just received the darshan of Shiva, and Shiva himself has expressed his affection for the Prachetas, but not just the Prachetas, but all devotees of the Lord. Actually, for the Prachetas, it was said due to their sincerity, their devotion, their cooperation, they were able to attract the likes of Lord Shiva himself, a great devotee of the Lord. As it said, Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. Lord Shiva is considered the greatest Vaishnava. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is also said, Brahmanda Pramite Kona Bhagyavana Jeev, Guru Krishna Pasare Poi Bhakti Lata Bija. According to the karma, all living entities are wandering throughout the entire universe. Some of them are being elevated to the upper planetary systems, some are going down to the lower planetary systems, and some, like myself, stuck in limbo. But in any case, out of millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. But when you think about it, actually, the meeting of the disciple with the guru is not a small thing. We wander in this material existence for so many millions of years, so many millions of lifetimes. Ultimately, we're just lost. We're drifting throughout the cosmos. So it's only when someone sincerely is repentant of their wasting time in this world, it's only when someone is actually sincerely over what the material world is all about that they're able to actually meet a guru. Through the super soul in the heart, the super soul sees the sincerity of the prospective disciple, spiritual aspirant. And the super soul then arranges so that the prospective disciple, spiritual aspirant, can actually meet the guru. And on meeting the guru gifts the disciple with the seed of the creeper devotional service. So I've heard from our own Guru Maharaj that what the seed of the creeper devotional service looks like is actually, what it is in actuality is training in devotional service. So the Guru, he trains us to be able to perform devotional service, to be able to become eligible to actually serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly. as well as that, more relevant to this particular verse and purport, we understand that the Guru also gives us formal initiation into the chanting of the Mahamantra. So in this particular section, in this particular verse, we're hearing about how Lord Shiva, he voluntarily came to give blessings and benedictions, again, due to the sincerity and the devotion of the Prachetas. Lord Shiva himself, whose darshan doesn't come easily, comes by his own volition to meet the Prachetas and gift them with the chanting of a powerful mantra, quote unquote. So then Prabhupada, he goes on to explain in the purport that when a mantra is received by a great devotee, or from a great devotee, I should say, then this mantra, while being effective in of itself, becomes even more effective. It becomes even more potent. So how is that? Because the mantra, when received by a genuine guru, is actually given through the disciplic succession. It's not something that's acquired cheaply. In the Padma Purana, it said, Sampradaya vihinaye mantras te nisphala mataha. So the translation of that is, any mantra that does not come in disciplic succession is considered to be useless. So while that may be true, generally speaking, we also understand that for those of us who aren't initiated or who are aspiring for initiation, the chanting of the Maha Mantra specifically is not completely useless. Look at it, look at the transformation in our own lives. And we can see before initiation, after initiation, we have most definitely changed in so many ways, our behavior, our character. We've developed so many qualities which we wouldn't have otherwise developed. Even just as a new devotee, if you think about it, how many people in this world are able to obey the four regulative principles that of themselves? Maybe if you're from India, a village, very pious, it's just the cultural norm. But especially for us from the West, to be able to obey these four regulative principles is actually an amazing feat. How is it possible? It's simply due to the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who manifests that mercy through the chanting of his holy name. So at the beginning, there is definitely some benefit, even if you aren't initiated, but as the verse explains here, after one receives formal initiation and they receive the Maha Mantra, which has been chanted by the Guru, then it becomes more potent. I remember when I had first got initiated, my first initiation, which was about 5 years now. Yeah, 5 years ago, I believe. Yeah, the way I imagined it is like in some cartoons that I used to watch. Unfortunately, I didn't watch the Mahabharata and Ramayana when I was younger. I wasn't so fortunate. But in a genre called anime, you have a cartoon, for example, called Avatar: The Last Airbender. And yeah, a lot of Westerners know this cartoon. Basically, it's about a monk who gradually realizes his full spiritual potential, and he's able to manipulate the elements. He's got mystic powers. But he comes across many teachers and gurus, and every time he meets a guru or a teacher, they sort of, supercharge him with some sort of mystic potency, and then he becomes more powerful. And it gradually happens until he reaches divine consciousness. So I thought it was going to be like that. I thought as soon as I get initiated, I'll be supercharged. I'll become like a superhuman or superhero or something. It wasn't necessarily the case that happened, but I did notice very so slightly that my chanting actually did seem to improve. It did seem to also have more potency and more meaning in my life. Actually, I started to value the chanting of the Maha Mantra more after that, because it's a serious commitment to want to commit to the service of a guru and the chanting of the Maha Mantra. Before, it may be something that you do casually, or you take for granted. But after you take initiation, you understand there is a certain weight of responsibility and duty that comes with that initiation. So some people may argue, because the Maha Mantra is, let's say, given out so freely within ISKCON, that the potency of the mantra is actually lost. Yeah, there are a lot of instances that I've seen, even in the West, I've seen in India, but also in Western countries now, the chanting of mantras is becoming more popular. You have many kirtan groups, non-ISKCON obviously, who are chanting the names of the demigods. And you also have people who do what's called TM. I meet a lot of these types of people on books. TM stands for Transcendental Meditation. So as soon as you hear that, you may think, oh, chanting the Maha Mantra. But actually, the way it works is that they receive a secret mantra from the teacher. They have to pay some money to the teacher, minimum of $108. And they're not allowed to tell that mantra to anybody. So people like that, when they hear that we give the mantra out freely, the Maha Mantra, they consider it to be reduced in its potency. Because actually, if something is so valuable, why would you share it? So we have the analogy, which is used in other instances, of counterfeit money versus real money. So counterfeit money, you can print it yourself, you can print it in large numbers. But because it's not actually sanctioned that you use that money within the economy by the government, then actually it doesn't have any value. It doesn't matter how much you print it or not. Whereas for someone who actually has real money, which has been sanctioned by the government to actually be valid within the economy, then the money, it actually has value. You can actually use it. So first of all, because the Maha Mantra that we received has been sanctioned by scripture as being the most potent means of deliverance from this age, Hariyanama, Hariyanama, Hariyanama eva kevalam, kalunasteva nasteva gitiranyata. Because it's been given by a genuine guru who has come in the disciplic succession, then the mantra actually has an effect. Most people, if they say that on the street, and you will meet these people if you do books regularly, it's because they don't actually know what a mantra is supposed to do for a person. Actually, if you want to see the effects of a genuine mantra that's been given through the disciplic succession, look at the person chanting it. If they're chanting sincerely, then you'll actually see a great transformation in their character over time, and you'll be able to just notice a genuine difference between them and the average person. So it was actually found also in Lord Chaitanya's time that there were people who also held this view that by sharing the Maha Mantra so widely, chanting the names of God so freely and liberally, it would lose its potency. In Navadvip, when Lord Chaitanya was inaugurating the Sankirtan movement, up until that point, it was said that the devotees within that particular area had been repressed by the Muslim rule. And all of a sudden, after Lord Chaitanya had encouraged the devotees to chant in Sankirtan, then it was found that all day, all night, the Vaishnavas, the devotees, were chanting loudly and in complete ecstasy and bliss, to the point where the Muslims, they went to complain to the Qazi at the time. They went to complain that they couldn't sleep because the devotees, the Vaishnavas, they're chanting all night. And as well as that, they're banging cymbals so loud that it deafens the ears. Sometimes experience that at the temple when the kirtan gets so ecstatic when Kala Samvara is leading or something like that, it deafens the ears. So the Qazi took note of this, and as we know, he decided to take action against the devotees. But not only them, there was a class of Hindus who also complained to the Qazi. They complained that because these devotees are so freely chanting the names of God everywhere, they're actually diminishing the potency of God's names. So the reason was because even at that time, the so-called Hindus, who also happen to be Brahmanas, they didn't actually understand the true potency of God's names. One of the great mistakes that they would make at the time was to equate Lord Vishnu's names, Narayan's names, Krishna's names with that of the demigods. But it's said that that's not possible. Whether it be Lord Shiva's names, Lord Brahma's names, even the highest demigods, none of them can be equated to the potency that is afforded by the Mahamantra or by the names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, Narayan, and Vishnu. Therefore, it's offense to equate them. It's also an offense to think like other Vedic hymns, the holy names of the Lord are actually diminished in their potency when chanted freely. Again, as the Shastras state, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalu Nasteva, Nasteva Gitiranyata. The chanting of the Mahamantra, the holy names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this is the only means of deliverance in this age. Actually, what this verse is implying is that the holy names of God, they have a potency which cannot be appreciated by the average person. So therefore, because we've been given the gift of this Mahamantra, the gift of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, how do we make the most of this great opportunity? Because it is actually an opportunity. As we know, Srila Prabhupada has made the guarantee. One just chants the holy name, they stick to the 4 regular principles, and even if they only reach 70% purification in this lifetime of all of material impurities, then they're actually eligible to go back to Godhead. So it's a great opportunity. In this one life, we can actually go back to Godhead. We don't need to linger here, essentially wasting our time, trying to build an empire, trying to build some sort of situation in this world, which we know, deep down we know is going to be taken away from us at some point. So to make the most of this great opportunity, to get the most from chanting, what I usually say when I'm doing outreach talks and explaining the Mahamantra is this self-made sutra: chant with the heart, hear with the ear. Essentially, at the highest level of chanting, one must chant like a baby crying for its mother, and they must hear that chanting. It's also very much emphasized that in order to actually get the most from chanting, we have to become free from offenses. So as we all know the 10 offenses, we chant them every morning at Mangalarti at the temple. As we know, we also chant the verse, Bahujanma Kori Yari Shravana Kirtana, Tabutana Paya Krishna Pari Premadana. As one of it is infested with the 10 offenses in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, despite his endeavor to chant the holy name, for many births, he will not get the benefit of this chanting. He will not actually get the love of Godhead, which is the ultimate goal of this chanting. So offenses are something that we need to be aware of. And Lord Chaitanya, in his Shikshastakam, also says, Nam Namakari Bahudani Shaktis Tatra Pitani Tam Mitas Maranena Kalaha. E tadrashi tavakripa bhagavama mapi, daivam idrisham ihajani nanuraga. So he explains, he's making a prayer to the Lord. My Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, in your holy name there is all good fortune for the living entity, and therefore you have many names such as Krishna and Govinda, by which you expand yourself. You invested all your potencies in those names, and there are no hard and fast rules for remembering them. My dear Lord, although you bestow such mercy upon the fallen conditioned souls by liberally teaching your holy names, I am so unfortunate that I commit offenses while chanting the holy name, and therefore I do not achieve attachment for chanting. So na anuraga, no attachment for the holy name. This verse always comes to mind at the end of a chanting session for me. Yeah, you're always faced with the reality that despite the fact that this process is so simple, actually the heart has no longing to do this activity. There's no attachment to do this activity. And it's, yeah, as the verse states, generally it's because we cause offenses to the holy name. But the main offense that actually trumps all offenses, and by addressing this particular offense, by removing this particular offense, it actually also allows all the other offenses to be mitigated, is the offense of chanting inattentively. So at the end of the purport, Lord Shiva, he actually advises the Prachetas, as you read at the very end of the purport, and also indirectly everyone who reads this pastime, to chant attentively. Because again, inattentiveness in chanting is the biggest offense. So therefore, if we want to mitigate this offense, we need to know how to make our chanting circumstances as conducive as possible so that we can actually benefit from the chanting, that we can actually get the full effect of the chanting. So I'm sure most of you have heard that there are actually 3 levels to chanting properly, chanting attentively. So first, we have to chant attentively on the level of the body. And then next up is the level of the mind. And lastly, finally, the most important actually is chanting attentively on the level of the heart. So I'll briefly speak a bit about these 3 levels, maybe some tips. This is not something that we necessarily learn overtly as devotees, something that we hear maybe in the course of our practicing, through a lecture or something. But yeah, it's good to hear this thing at the beginning of our practice, at the end, during, at any time. It's always good to be reminded of these things. So on the level of the body, as we know, the most ideal situation is to wake up early. We try to make the most of the early hours of the morning, the Brahma Muhurta period, because for so many reasons it's conducive to meditation practices, to yoga practices, to deep introspection. So therefore, for most devotees, they wake up early. Even though it's painful, even though it's hard, we still do it because we understand that actually this is where we actually get the most value from our day and our life. I've heard from a Maharaj that he was told by another devotee that the distance between you and the spiritual world is the distance between your sleeping bag or your bed and the shower and then the temple room in the morning. So if we can make that trip between our beds in the early hours of the morning to the shower, to the temple room, then actually we've more or less made it to the spiritual world. If we do that every day, then our chances of staying in the spiritual world increase. So if we can at least wake up early, that's a good thing. If we can be in a quiet environment as well, a clean environment, no distraction, as we know, that's also very conducive, very not good for the mind, makes the mind clear, peaceful, and most receptive to the enchanting properly. Some other don'ts, and I wasn't the one who made this list. It was actually David Kimariji, who also has like a chanting seminar series on YouTube. But we do notice this. I have done this before I started, or before I was initiated living in an ashram. A few don'ts that we should keep in mind when we are chanting. And of course, everyone's situation is different. So at a certain point, if you are in such a situation where you have no other option, maybe you will have to compromise. But we understand that there's the ideal and we always strive for the ideal. So there are a few don'ts to do on the level of the body. The first is driving japa, for obvious reasons, because it's safe to say it's pretty dangerous to try and chant in your beads in your hand and then use the steering wheel as well, especially if you're on the motorway or in a traffic jam or something like that, like changing lanes. Yeah, self-explanatory. Cleaning your house japa. So generally, you don't want to be doing anything else other than chanting. So if you find yourself cleaning your house while you're doing japa, maybe, as one devotee has said before to another devotee, I've overheard this, maybe you should have cleaned your house the day before. Make sure your house is clean in general. Another one, conversational japa. Sometimes it's seen that when a devotee is chanting, they start a conversation with another devotee. And while they're chanting on the beads, the other devotee's speaking to them. And then when they reply, and the other devotee chants on their beads. So you probably won't get the most out of your japa by doing that. Some more wacky ones that I've seen, Ashtanga yoga japa. Especially when you're in the contemporary ashram, the working man's ashram, that for those of you who know. If you're having some bhaktas over, yeah, which we have in the past, sometimes they do some interesting things while they're chanting japa. I have seen someone do the whole Ashtanga yoga series, primary to tertiary, while chanting japa. And when I was in the contemporary ashram in Wellington, so you don't want to be doing that. Scenic walking japa, so it's not okay to go for a japa walk, but at the same time, you don't want to be distracted by the things that are around you. You don't want to be looking at the flowers and looking at the birds, the cars, whatever it may be. Generally, if we do need to walk, it's just pacing back and forth. We're not actually really caring much about our surroundings. And then, of course, one to avoid is sleeping japa. It's very simple to avoid this. As soon as you start feeling tired, as soon as you start falling asleep, try stand up, and again, you can pace around. So broadly speaking, basically on the level of the body, you don't want to be doing anything with your senses that detracts from your focus in chanting. So then on level 2, the level of the mind, which is attainable when level 1 is complete, when level 1 is done sufficiently, and the situation is conducive for engaging the mind, then you do just that. You try and engage your mind. Try and focus on the mantra and the sound vibration. So a few don'ts that we try not to do. Number 1, meditating on sense gratification, meditating on our material desires. For obvious reason, it's a distraction, first of all. But second of all, if we're not careful, we might actually get what we wish for. Because it's said that Krishna's name is like Chintamani, it's like touchstone. Nama Chintamani Krishnas, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. The holy name is like touchstone. So if we're not careful, the desires that we meditate on while we're chanting might actually materialize by the grace of Krishna himself. And I have experienced something like this in the past. Again, before I moved into an ashram, before I started practicing seriously. Long story short, I had a person in my life who was close to me, and they were suffering from mental illness, from psychosis specifically, schizophrenia. So they would hear voices and they would have hallucinations. And at the time, They were suffering. And I could see that, and I felt quite pained to see their suffering. So at the time, I'd already been introduced by the devotees through the process of chanting. I understood that actually chanting is direct communication with Krishna himself. And Krishna is a person, so he reciprocates with your desire. So at the time, because I didn't understand the true value and the true purpose of chanting, I decided to chant with the intent of taking that person's mental illness upon myself. So I wanted them to be free from suffering, and I thought the selfless thing to do would be to ask God to try and take their suffering from them and just put it on me. So I did that. I chanted probably the most sincerely and intensely that I had up until that point. Again, it was with a desire which isn't necessarily conducive. But as soon as I finished chanting, I put the beads down, and then all of a sudden, you may be very shocked to hear, I started to actually hear voices. Just like you hear a voice when you're having a conversation, it was as clear as that. And then my vision of the world started to become distorted. You know, as I looked around, I started to perceive a certain darkness about the world. You know, I started to feel like there was an evil that had descended upon my consciousness. So at that point, I thought, okay, I've received what I wanted. Now I'm stuck with it. But after an hour of walking around in such a state, I actually realized that probably I wouldn't be able to handle this. So unfortunately, I'm embarrassed to say, I then asked Krishna to remove this affliction from me. And he took it away immediately. So at the time, because I was a new devotee, it gave me actually a lot of faith in the fact that chanting actually has some potency, and actually you're dealing with a person when you chant. So again, point being, we don't want to meditate on any desires other than the desire to please Krishna. Actually, we go in with the intent of pleasing Krishna, and we focus on crying and trying to make that connection. So another thing that we don't do on the level of the mind, we try not to plan while chanting. And again, this is a big one, especially if you're a busy person. It's one of the biggest issues that I have with my chanting, is that the desire to plan and, you know, make sure that I've organized everything in my mind so that my day goes smoothly, my week goes smoothly, is always, making it hard to chant. But again, we just bring the mind back. And finally, we don't want to reminisce on the past either. As in the same way that we don't want to hanker, we don't want to reminisce on the past. We leave that for when we're writing in our journal or something like that. So again, when we chant, we just want to focus on the sound alone. My Guru Maharaj just said, we want to just hear the mantra and let the mantra bathe our consciousness. But even higher than that is level 3, chanting on the level of the heart. So I said, when the body and everything is completely situated in such a way that it's conducive for chanting, and then when the mind is focused, then actually you can start to chant on the level of the heart. And as I said earlier, you want to chant in such a way that it's like a baby crying for its mother. So Govinda Charan, who was currently staying at the temple, he said to a group of us in a class, and when a baby cries, sincerely, the mother is there immediately. The mother's there to tend to the baby's needs, to make sure it's okay. So similarly, when we chant sincerely, we chant from the heart, and we're actually hearing, then actually Krishna is there. Actually, Krishna is always there. As soon as you chant his holy name, actually Krishna is present. Another thing that my Guru Maharaj says in relation to chanting is that we should understand that when we start chanting, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, is right there in front of us. We're seeing Krishna through the air. Conversely, I've also heard from others that when I've asked the question, so how do we chant attentively? They've actually said, if you just try and cry out sincerely, then actually the mind will automatically be focused on chanting the holy name. So it can go both ways. You can set yourself up on the level of the body and mind so that chanting from the heart becomes easier. Or if you're able to just chant from the heart straight away, then automatically the mind is engaged and we assume that the body's not doing anything else, especially if you're chanting, sincerely crying for Krishna, his mercy, his shelter. Therefore, Prabhupada, he has also instructed his disciples, we should try to hear ourselves chant sincerely. So in essence, it's a very simple process. But again, sometimes it's so simple, this process, that we may just miss the point. And there are so many benefits that are afforded by chanting properly. Transcendental benefits. Cleansing of the mirror of the heart, Chetudapranamajanam. Protection from Maya. If you want to see how one is protected from Maya, by chanting the holy name, look at the instance of Haridas Thakur. Through his intense absorption in chanting, he was always sheltered from Maya, to the point where we see Maya personified came to him in the form of the most beautiful, attractive being. And he wasn't alert in the slightest. He actually instead caused her to become his disciple. And ultimately, freedom from material attachment and attachment to Krishna himself. So, in conclusion, when we're given the mantra by our guru, we consider it a gift. It's a great opportunity. And we should understand the value of this gift that he's given us. We should show that we do value this gift by actually attentively chanting the mantra. And in that way, as Prabhupada says, our lives will be perfect if we can accomplish that feat. So I'll finish there. Thank you for your kind attention. Did anyone have any comments or things to share, additions, questions maybe?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Beautiful class, just explaining the text so nicely. Though it is a small purport, but it has a very, very depth meaning. And how you explained us that how we chanting or getting the mantra from our Guru is so made powerful by the Guru itself, and how we should chant when we receive the mantra from the Guru in the three levels, which is in the level of body, mind, and heart. So when you start chanting, of course, it is in the level of body, because we are the preliminary devotees having no experience or very little experience. So we don't understand the importance, but by doing it regularly and hearing from our spiritual master, we understand the importance, and slowly we get to elevate at the stage of the heart. So it is a level of advancement, and it is very, very important to do the chanting in the right perspective, like you mentioned in the level of body, how we do the courtesy japas while we are driving, working, or seeing the TV, and all sorts of courtesy japas. So to avoid those and understanding the importance of japa, it is very important that you are talking to your supreme person. So you need to give proper respect. So slowly then we come to the stage of mind, where we understand that mind to be connected through the japa, so that all three parts of our body, that is body, mind, and heart, get connected to really connect with the Supreme Lord. And that is the way how it is to be. And Prabhupada has given us a very, very simple way. But as you mentioned, we think it is very simple, and then we started molding it in our way. And that is the problem, that we sometimes lose the attention. So according to our spiritual master, on and on is instruction. It's very important for us to understand the level of chanting because that is the only way to save ourselves from all sorts of calamities around within us, within and without. So it's very, very important. Thank you so much. Highlighting these 3 points is very, very important to understand when you do the chanting and what is the proper time and space and your condition of the mind need to be just very properly so that at one point we can do the chanting through heart and that will immediately connect Krishna. Of course, Krishna is connected, but it depends the percentage. If we fully to be engaged with Krishna, we need to be doing the chanting like a baby is crying. So in a praying mood, not in an attitude, and that makes the difference. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. Very nice. Was there anything else from anyone?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna.
The Dandavat Pranams.
Thank you very much for today's class and particularly bringing out the importance of how we can make chanting offenseless. First, it will start with 2 things. One is one has to take it very seriously. The disciple has to take the mantra from a guru, and the guru should be from the parampara. And unless he is from parampara, the mantra is often not. And as you have rightly told, that sampradaya vihinaye mantra nishkola mata. And so it is provided in Padma Puran that unless it is taken from this, from a proper sampradaya, it is not a valid because it is not connected to Krishna. And the mantra should be connected either way to connect to the Lord, and it is also, it has come from the Lord. So it should be corrected from both the sides. And the person who is taking it has to take it very seriously, and he has to take it from a person who has known the truth, as is given in 434 that in Bhagavad Gita, that tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena shevaya udekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. So he is the tattvadarshi, and he is the tattvadarshi who is connected to the Lord, and he can give us that knowledge. And you have very, and that is the first part. And second part, you have told how we can make our japa perfect, and not from the bodily level, not on the mental level, but at the level of the soul. And you have given very nicely described it. So thank you for that. And when we take it seriously, and as you have told in the beginning, that it can underwent a serious change in our lifestyle. And lifestyle means not in the living, but our connection to the Lord. It makes a serious change, and we get all the qualities. A devotee, good qualities automatically develop to devotee. He has not to try for that separately, but when he is connected to the Lord, these qualities automatically develops him. And that is the purpose, or that is the way also to go to connect to the Lord. Thank you for that, and very nice class.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your nice comments. I feel like you would have given a very nice class if you were to speak on this verse, both of you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I just ask you a question? Thank you so much for a well thought out class. I was very impressed. I am wanting to know, so you mentioned that this famous verse about this famous quote from Prabhupada about if you simply chant Hare Krishna and follow the regular principles for the rest of your life to 70% purity, you can go back to Godhead. Could you give any more specifics or like inspiration on that? Because that sounds like quite a big promise. And can you think of any devotees who, or like, what does that look like actually, you know, for us? How do we know we've made it or not?
Right. Well, first of all, that statement about needing to reach 70% purity to be eligible to go back to Godhead. Only he said it to his disciples. He was in like a lecture. He was lecturing his disciples, and in the class he said, one must become 100% pure to go back to Godhead. And he looked at his disciples, and they were, you know what the backgrounds they were coming from, they all looked sad and dejected. So apparently he was stepping down. There were some stairs leading down from the Vyasasan to the ground. So he took one step down and he said, okay, 90%. And then they still looked dejected. Then he took another step, 80% then. And they still looked dejected. It's pretty generous already, but still. And then he took one more step. He said, okay, 70%, but no less. And then they accepted that. So that was where that statement comes from. So first of all, I'd say, if Prabhupada's staying it as the previous Acharya, or the founder Acharya, sorry, then that's the way it is, you know. It basically because he's authorized by Krishna to set up certain rules and regulations within the material world for the purpose of having living entities become Krishna conscious. That's it, you know. What more can be said? So what does that look like practically? Well, we understand that there are different stages and phases in a person's devotional life if they're applying themselves sincerely. So again, if you're chanting sincerely and if you're following the four regulative principles, you're guaranteed to make progress. So if you have that down, that's one practical, get the chanting down. That's one practical step you can take. Be sincere in that. Be sincere in your hearing as well. Because we understand that there are stages, as I said. So first, faith is what causes a devotee to then want to look into, you know, Krishna consciousness, the process that leads to bhajana, or that leads to association with the devotees, bhajana kriya as well, practicing. And through the process of bhajana kriya, that leads to anatta nivritti, so the removal of all the anattas from the heart of the devotees, the unwanted things. So according to the statement from Prabhupada, he's saying 70% purity. So if 70% of your anattas are removed, based on my understanding, then you're eligible. What that looks like, I'm not there yet, so I can't say. So maybe ask Stambhabhavas or Gurudev or something like that. Maybe they can enlighten you on what that looks like. But yeah, maybe someone else has something to add in this regard. Did that help at all?
Vajra Sain is wanting to add something.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, one thing I've heard is that when a lot of people assume, that's why we do the ISKCON disciple course, that Prabhupada could do things that the previous acharyas haven't authorized, but actually that's not true. Prabhupada, even the 16 rounds is in Shastra, that the minimum it can be 16, but the recommended is 64. So people often think, oh, Prabhupada made that up. He just gave his mercy. So my taking on that from some lectures can be, one perspective is that it's Guru Kripa in Shastra, like Narada Muni and cursing, and there's Guru Kripa involved with things. So we get given instructions, but Guru Kripa is inconceivable and can act in so many ways. Like Lord Chaitanya liberated that dog, his puppy. I don't know if you know the pastimes, but just for time, won't go into it. But so the 70% is meaning, don't worry, my mercy is there and my blessings are there. And if you try to serve me, then Guru Kripa will act in a certain way, so don't fret about those things. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't endeavor for 100%, because then we can use it in that way. Well, I'm doing 70%, and do you know what I mean? So I think it's some subtle, well, I don't have to try so hard, but we have to try our best. The Guru's mercy is so inconceivable, just like the mantra's mercy is inconceivable. Hare Krishna mantra. So that's one way I've tried to digest these things from hearing from different speakers in this call. I don't know if that's something.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Very enlightening. Thanks for elaborating. Hare Krishna. Should we finish there, or is there anyone else who wanted to say something?
So it appears, Prabhuji, there is no other person to make any comment. So thank you for your nice class, Prabhuji. Vancha kalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam
पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। ग्रेट मानवी प्रभु की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल।
All blessed to the assembled
All
devotees.
glories to assembled